Creating game saves in Unity can't be this easy, can it? Welcome to my devlog. I'm Simon, a senior creative from London's post-production industry who's moved into the world of indie game development. These devlogs discuss the systems I use and the thinking behind them. So, welcome back to my devlog. It's February 2026 and recently we've been a little bit busy. But I have managed to cram in a few lines of code for my new game. My aim was to create a data persistence system, and my research led me to a really simple file class that can save and load. So let's take a look at it. I couldn't find anything in the Unity documentation. It doesn't mean it's not there, it just means I couldn't find it. But I did come across the Microsoft C# library called System.io. And the System.io namespace is filled with lots of classes for saving and loading data. And the one I want is the file class. And in particular, I want file class write all text. And this is the exact line of code I've used that saves all the data in my game. So let's take a look at that in action. So here's the current prototype of my game. We can fly through the scene and then we can land. We can get off the vehicle. And I've made this little button here, and when you stand on it, it saves the game. And that is it. The game is now saved. To prove it, we'll just fly to the other end of the level. Okay, so this is the leftmost part of my level, and this is what the trees look like here. Now I've created a save, I can then load that game, and all the trees will be put back in exactly the same place as it spawned them the first time. You'll see that the trees are exactly the same before we get to this wall. Now, to prove that this is saved, what I'm going to do is I'll go to one of the other slots and you'll see that it spawns in the trees in a different position. So let's say we go to slot 3 and it's spawning in the trees again. And if we go down to the leftmost part of this level, we'll see that the trees are not the same. As you can see, we have a different layout. We have a tree here which isn't the same. So let's look under the hood at what is actually happening. Let's get to the level. Inside my level I have this save button, and all it is a simple mesh which doesn't do anything. I've got a text mesh pro object which has got the word saving, which we turn on and off. And then we've got a script and a collider. The collider's set to a trigger. So on trigger enter, if it's already saving, it just kicks it out. If it's not already saving, we get a little message on the screen in the debug console. And then it calls the save level prefabs script, which is a static class. And here's the line of code that does the saving when you get there. And that's it. That's all you need to write the file. But it's not quite that simple, because you need to give that line the actual data that you want to save, and that's where I went down the rabbit warren. So basically I'm formatting my data that I'm saving as a JSON file, and that's easy enough to do. I create a string, I've called the string JSON, then I just take my collection of data and use the JSON utility to JSON. And the true just formats it so we can read it nicely. Here is the save file. It's called data collection and it's a list of position, X, Y, and Z coordinates, rotation data, and a prefab type to tell it what prefab that is. So that's prefab type 4. That prefab type is an enum. The enum just allows me to predetermine a string, and instead of it storing it as a string, it passes integers through, which cause less garbage. So whatever prefabs I have, I will put them in this enum, And those enums are assigned on my object. So for the tree, for instance, here it is, look, prefab type, tree A, and I can select it there. So let's look at how I'm creating this data that gets converted into a JSON format and then saved onto the disk. Every object in my pool that I want to save the position of has been given this class, the savable. And this is the method that creates the save data. So we create a new save data, and in that we have a position, a rotation, and a prefab type. So that save data is a struct. Here's the struct. It's just, I can change whatever I want, put whatever I want in there. But for now, I'm saving a vector3, a quaternion, and a prefab type. And what this does is it accesses a list, and for each item in the list, it looks at its savable data and adds it to a save data collection. So save data collection, all that is a list of save data. So it's a list of these items. So all the save data from each object is stored in one list. And then that list is converted to a JSON file. So where does it get this list for the savables from? So I've created this public method that just saves all the references to all the items that need saving. So you can see here on enable, save level prefabs, register this. So it just sends a reference of itself, and that reference gets stored in this list. And then it iterates through that list of every object and fetches its game data, stores it in the collection. Then it looks in the next one in the list, gets its reference, fetches its save data, puts it in the list, and it just iterates through that until it's completed the list of everything that wants saving and put all their data into this collection, and the collection gets written to disk. For me, that was a day's work getting that working, and I'm no expert in C#. I'm still learning, but I'm very happy with that. So let's have a look at the loading screen now and see the reverse of that. It's quite simple. It pulls the files out of the pool. There's a switch here that changes the glow value depending on which one I've highlighted. And then when we press the shoot button, it stores which game save slot I'm using in a global variable. So any game object knows which slot we're using for saving. It finds the name of the level and pops that into a global variable too, because that forms part of the name. And then it just loads that level. Once we get into level, my prototype does this. It gets the path info for that current level. And I've just made a static class that finds the paths depending on, there's a few different paths that I need for loading and saving, and it just gets the application persistent data path, which is different for each system. So you have to ask for it depending on whether you're on a mobile or a VR or a computer. That path is going to be slightly different. And then it gets the slot data, which generates the folder for that. And here's the one that returns the path for the current level. So it's path combine, persistent data path, the folder which it's in, which is just the game save slot 1, 2, or 3, and then the current level string. What will happen is there'll be a different JSON file depending on what level you're on, because it's going to be open world. You can nip between the levels, so I'm going to save each level separately so they can be loaded independently. Like it says here, if the file doesn't exist, spawn the objects. But if it does exist, rebuild from save data and then access its method, rebuild level. And then send the path to that method so it knows what it's rebuilding. Rebuild from save data is this class here. So rebuild the level, we give it the path. So if the file exists, load level, you pass it the path, you create a new collection, save data collection. If the file doesn't exist, return an empty one. But if it does, this is the important bit, read all text, and it comes in as a string, as a JSON file, and then that JSON utility converts that string into retrieved data, which is my saved data collection. And then we will iterate through that list. And that's the array index. The array index is an array of all the pools. So each pool is stored in the array, and the prefab type is its index number. If there is one in the array, it can then go get pulled object. And that just accesses the object pool and gets the data for the position and rotation and blah, 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 and that will obviously grow over time. So as you can see, what started as a single line to save just a simple text file has a whole rabbit warren of places where it's fetching data from to put it into a format that then can be saved and then unwrapping that to load at the end. So I'm really happy with my data persistence system. So far, loading and saving that data is easy for me to understand and create, even with my basic knowledge of C#. So I've got a platform I can build upon. Now, if we look back into the game, here we are just sat here, and I can already see there must be 40 or 50 trees on screen already. And this level is quite large, and I want them to be a lot larger. So what I believe I need to do is build a chunk-based world streaming system for each level. And as we fly through the level like this, we will load the chunks in, pull the objects from the pool, and ditch the ones that we've flown past. But my chunk-based world streaming system is for a future video. My next video, I'll be looking for some help regarding some failed hardware. So if you know anything about computer hardware and you want to give me some advice, that'll be in the next video. See you then.